Hello everyone, Silent here and welcome back to another Bedrock Edition tutorial. Today I'll be showing you how to build an advanced raid farm in your Bedrock Edition worlds. This raid farm is unlike any other raid farm that you've seen in Minecraft, as this is a quad stacking raid farm, meaning it's basically 4 raid farms squished into one, and it's amazing, it's absolutely killer. It produces about 4,750 emeralds per hour, and it gets you to level 40 in just under 10 minutes, along with all of the other insane loot that you get from raid farms. It's just honestly an amazing farm, and you definitely want this thing in your worlds. So this farm is actually rather simple and straightforward to set up. However, it does use some advanced game mechanics to make the game think that there are 4 villages right next to this raid farm. That means that we can start a raid in every single one of the 4 villages and have 4 raids going at one time for some truly insane raids. This is about 3.5 times better than any other raid farm on the Bedrock Edition, and again, it's just really insane. Also, as a side note, if you thought the previous raid farm was insanely loud, then trust me, this one is way louder, but definitely worth it. So just to give you a little bit of a visualization of the rates of this farm, this is how many emeralds you will get from 1 hour. A full double chest and nearly a single chest as well, or like nearly 3 full shulker boxes just of emeralds, which is kind of ridiculous. And you also get like all of this other stuff. You get so much loot from these raid farms. You actually need like a double speed storage system to even be able to keep up with it. A single speed storage system will not keep up with the loot that you get from this farm. It is actually utterly insane. So this raid farm is also incredibly easy to use, as well as it is fully AFK and fully automatic, and it also uses looting 3 to get you the most loot per hour. So to use this thing, all you need to do is come into the lower part of the farm and then turn on the lower trident killer. That is going to kill all of the pillager captains that spawn in your outpost, and then they will give you the bad omen effect no matter where you are in the world. We're now going to go up to our upper kill chamber, which is 50 blocks above that spot. That way nothing else spawns around the outpost. Only the pillager captains will be able to spawn. And then what you do is you basically just stand on any of these 4 blocks in front of your upper kill chamber and then simply churn on the trident killers. You are now good to go for actually AFKing this farm. And if we can get ourselves some bad omen, we'll actually see this thing in action. And there we go. As you can see, we just got ourselves some bad omen, and if we're lucky, yeah, that actually did start raids in 2 villages, which is another thing that this farm does. So you don't actually need to do anything now that this raid farm is running. All you need to do is just kind of stand here, hold your looting 3 sword, and that'll give you all of the actual looting effect applied to the mobs, even though you're not doing anything. And you also collect all the experience too. So to give you a little rundown on how exactly this works, of course the lower part of the farm is entirely for getting the bad omen effect. All the pillager captains will spawn down there and immediately get killed by our lower trident killer. Once you are actually up here AFK in the kill chamber, you will be in 4 different spots. Each one of these spots is inside of a different village because of how we have actually positioned our 4 villages. They're just so perfectly spaced that each one of these spots is in village 1, village 2, village 3, and village 4. So for instance, if I get bad omen right here, that's going to activate a raid in village 1 and push me into village 2. And that's also going to start a raid in village 2 eventually next time we get bad omen. Once a raid is started in village 2, it's going to push me into village 3, where I can then start another raid and finally be pushed into village 4, and then the entire cycle just restarts over. So you'll never really waste a bad omen with this farm. You'll get parked in a village that doesn't have a raid happening until you get more bad omen effect. That way we get maximum number of raids happening all the time, and honestly, it's just really cool. Like, I really like this farm and this entire concept. It turned out extremely well. So let's see this thing in action in a little bit more detail. As you can see, we just had 2 different waves spawn. We should see another 2 spawn, and as you can see, we have only 1 raid bar on screen at a time. You have to be in the village that the raid is happening to actually see the raid bar, but as you can see, as we move around, we're getting 4 different bars, and honestly, it's really cool. So we should see the final wave of all 4 of these raids actually summon in. As you can see, see, we have a lot of guys very quickly. It might look like they kind of struggle to fall into the kill chamber, but they never actually get stuck for too long. And honestly, it's just really fun to see this many pillagers in one area. And if we check out the lower kill chamber, you can see it's absolutely crazy down here too. Just constant death, chaos, and noises in the air, lots of experience, and many, many drops. So of course from this farm you also get the Hero of the Village effect, but on Bedrock Edition it's actually kind of useless. It doesn't have the full functionality, and there are several bugs with it that prevent it from being fully functional, but it is kind of a nice thing to have, I guess. So thank you very much to Pico Nico for helping me design this raid farm. I was just about to look into getting some form of instant spawn raids on the Bedrock Edition or some form of stacking raid farm, and then Pico Nico came to me with this method of quad stacking, and I was like, oh, that's kind of perfect. So we've been spending the last couple of days refining and testing and improving this concept, and it turned out extremely well, so hopefully you guys enjoy it. And again, thank you very much Pico Nico for the help with this design. So there's really only two mechanics that you need to know of before we actually get into building of the farm. The only things that raids cannot spawn on is scaffolding and leaves, hence why we have leaves and scaffolding absolutely everywhere in this farm. They spawn on every single other thing in the game. If it's a block, raids will spawn on it. You have to build out of scaffolding and you have to build out of leaves. If you don't have bamboo, you can find it in sunken ships. Down in the description of the video is going to be a list of all of the additional materials that you need to build this farm, so check that out if you are interested. And also down in the description is going to be a world download for this exact farm, so you can check it out in person to see how it works to tinker with it. So if you thought that this advanced raid farm looked very similar to my improved raid farm, that would be because it's basically just an extension of this thing. So to actually build today's farm, you will have to watch my previous improved raid farm tutorial. If you have this raid farm already in your world, then that is excellent. You are pretty much good to go. Make sure you have watched my little fixes video to make sure that you have the most current raid farm. That fixes video will be linked everywhere that you would expect it to be, and it's also on the second channel. So go watch that. Make sure that your current improved raid farm is fully up to date with all of the stuff and things. If you do not have any form of raid farm in your world and you just have a plain pillager outpost, and then what you need to do is you need to go watch my improved raid farm tutorial and build all of that stuff in your world and make sure that it works just fine. Link to the improved raid farm will be absolutely everywhere. And also, of course, make sure that you watch the little fixes video so that you have a fully updated farm. So go watch those two videos if you haven't already, build that stuff in your world, and then come back here, and then we'll be ready to go. I know, it's a little bit convoluted, but trust me, this is gonna save us like 30 minutes of tutorial, so you're welcome. So the first step of converting your improved raid farm into the advanced raid farm is actually gonna be doing with the kill chamber and the item collection. So what you want to do is you want to make a little bridge going out underneath your improved raid farm, and then we need to split up this hopper chain into two different lines. So the first thing we're going to do is break out that block and place a hopper there, break out that block and place a hopper going to the side, and then break out that block as well. And this is where we're going to place in our secondary dropper to send all the loot from our farm down into our storage system. So we need to have a stair like so, and then just go ahead and place down 3 leaves on either side of that just to, you know, get the items kind of centered and make sure nothing is ever going to spawn in this area, because raids like to spawn anywhere that they possibly can. So now that we have those 2 hoppers in place, if you're quick enough, you might actually be able to remove one of these hoppers and place them in quick enough, but if not, then the hopper minecart's gonna fall out of there, and that is perfectly fine because we're gonna put those back in. But anyway, make sure that these 2 hoppers are going to the left side, and make sure that all of these hoppers are going to the right side as well. Before we put the hopper minecarts back in place, real quick, we're gonna place a normal piston right there. You might have to nudge that hopper minecart back into place in case it, you know, tries to get out. But yeah, just put a normal piston right there. You also want to remove these blocks right here and that one as well. Place in a hopper going into that side, 1 more hopper right there, and then if you feel like it, you can also go ahead and place in your slab right now as well. So to get those hopper minecarts back in place, simply break it down this wall right here and basically just remove all of these blocks because they're kind of all in the way. You also need to go ahead and place down 2 pieces of normal rail, remove those leaves, place them like so, and then remove those rails as well. Then go ahead and place these leaves back in place. If you can't place them, just nudge these minecarts out of the way, it'll be fine, and there we go. So now we can get ourselves the hopper minecarts, place one on that side, push that guy in there, place one on that side, push him in there too, and then you can go ahead and remove your rails. And now we might need to push these guys in there with a piston if you can't actually place in the blocks. So yeah, let's go ahead and do that real quick. What you need to do is get yourself 2 normal pistons right there, and then 2 solid blocks in front of them, and then just go ahead and kind of push them in like so. And now all 4 of our minecarts are back in place, solid blocks are in place as well, and we can go ahead and fill in this entire wall and make that back to how it was. We need to do one more thing in the kill chamber, and that is actually expand the trident killer. So remove these 4 blocks, place in 2 observers right there, and then 2 normal pistons in front of them as well, and that's going to be the extension to our trident killer. Now head around the side of your improved raid farm, and we need to remove this leaf, that block, and that leaf as well, and then just place in another row of solid blocks going all the way to the back corner of this farm. Have 1 solid block up like that, and then remove that leaf and place in 3 more solid blocks, just like so. We now need to continue this piece of redstone down and across all the way into this block. We're going to have a repeater on 1 tick going into that block, and then 3 more pieces of redstone dust right there. Actually, only 2. This needs to be a repeater on 2 ticks. That's going to be going into a solid block with a piece of redstone dust on top of it, and then we're going to have a dropper right there. Nothing is ever going to be inside of this dropper. We just need the observer behind it to actually detect when this dropper gets powered, so our trident killer works fine. Now what we need to do is we need to place leaves above all of this stuff going all the way back across the farm. While we're here, go ahead and place a solid block right there. Remove these 2 pieces of redstone dust and those 2 scaffoldings, and you want to place in 2 observers right there, and that is going to, of course, power your piston. We can go ahead and put those 2 pieces of redstone dust back, and also make sure that this repeater is on 2 ticks. That way your trident killer is slow enough that your ravengers won't be stuck on top of your pistons. So now go to the left side of your farm, and you need to fill in all of these blocks going up level with this right here, just to make sure that anything that does clip into this wall really does get suffocated and dies. And also go ahead and, of course, cover that with leaves too. Now is a good time to expand your scaffolding platform as much as you can. That way you just got a little bit more room to actually walk around up here. Of course, you have to use scaffolding. That is the only thing that raids do not spawn on besides leaves. And now what we need to do is we need to install the other pistons that are going to be pushing us around. So 1 piston right there, another one right there, turn around, and the final one is going to be like so. So as you can see, this will be pushing you around in a clockwise circle. So now we need to actually power these guys. For that, it's fairly straightforward. We want a block behind this piston right here, an observer facing upwards, which might be slightly difficult to place. For this one, we need to place a couple blocks up, remove that block, and then get down on the scaffolding and place another observer facing that like so. We need to do the same for this side as well, and then just get down there and place that facing upwards, and we're good to go for all 3 of those ones. We now need to place in a dropper over here. I'm going to place it facing downwards because I think it looks nice, totally subjective. And then you want to get yourself an observer facing upwards right there too. And that is the powering for all 4 of your pistons completely done. The final thing to do is to place in 4 leaves right here to cover the rest of your redstone, and then 1 more leaf right there above that observer. Wrapping up this platform now, we want to go ahead and place in a 2x2 of leaves right above the 4 spots that you're going to be standing. This will actually prevent raids from ever spawning on the piston heads when they are extended, because yes, raids will spawn on an extended piston for the fraction of a second that it's extended. So make sure you got those 4 leaves in place. We're going to place in a leaf right above that lever. Flip over to the other side. You want 2 leaves right there. And then you also want a leaf in this location, 1 block gap above that observer, a leaf in that location, 1 block gap above that guy. That one's already kind of filled in, and that one's filled in as well. And what you can do, if you want some light up here, you can place a torch on the side of that observer, or really you can put torches anywhere up here. Torches are actually exempt from raid spawning on them. Torches are totally fine. Also, make sure to go up to your spawning platform and place in a couple of buttons on these sides right here. This will help your mobs fall into your kill chamber because they'll see these as full blocks, but of course they won't actually be able to land on them. They kind of act as an improved trapdoor. So at this point, we've actually completed all of the redstone and all of that stuff that we need to do. The final thing to do from here on is actually install our 4 different villages and get them lined up perfectly, and then also move that villager. We're not going to be killing him, we're going to be using him for a different village. So what we need to do first is we need to figure out exactly where our 4 different villages are going to be going. The first step for that is to go and stand right here in front of your, first piston, and you want to pillar up by 6 blocks with a very easy to spot identifier block. You need this to be different from any other block that you're building with. That way you know what you're talking about. So we need to go up by 6 blocks, so that is 4 in total. Remove that boat, that's gonna be 5, and that is going to be 6. So now we're gonna need to tear into the farm just a little bit, remove these boats real quick and remove some of these leaves, and also just kind of break into this wall a little bit. The reason for this is we need to mark out this 2x2, which is directly above the 2x2 that you're standing in. As you can see, that's like the back left corner. That is the back left corner up here. So this is the 2x2 centered directly above that. We also need to extend this by 1 block going diagonally, so we have kind of like an X shape, and this is going to be the center of your 4 different villages right here. Now go ahead and extend this even further with a different identifier block, and this is where your actual beds with your actual villagers are going to be sitting. So we're going to have 4 of these 2x2 platforms going out diagonally from this. So remove those leaves, place in those temporary blocks. So once you have all of that stuff in place, we're gonna go out 7 blocks from the corner of this little orange pad right here. So that is 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then from this side as well, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And you're gonna want to run that into a sizable little platform. It doesn't really matter how big you build this, just give yourself ample room to place down beds and deal with villagers and the like. You're also going to want another portal up here. This is to get villagers directly into a village. That way you can actually stack your villages and build this farm properly with minimal hassle. You have to use another portal. Also, we're going to need at least 10 villagers up here. Likely, you will end up killing a couple. So make sure you have yourself a villager breeder. It doesn't matter what kind of villagers you use. So once you have your platform and nether portal installed, we need to make a little 2x2 platform just kind of floating in between these little walkways and that platform. This is going to be for our main village. This is going to be the village that we stack all of the other villages from. Once we have these stacked villages, we're then going to move those stacked villages over into their permanent resting places, which is going to be over there. So if you've watched my stacked iron farm tutorial, you will be familiar with this process, but don't worry, it's actually going to be significantly easier for this particular build since we don't need to worry about the leader of the village. So throughout this part of the tutorial, when you are going to be working with your villagers, you really want to work at nighttime. That way the villagers just sleep in their beds and they're not running absolutely everywhere. And that way you can definitely confirm that they are linked to that bed, since villagers only sleep in beds that they are linked to. But anyway, what you want to do is you want to send a villager through that nether portal and have it linked to one of the beds that's going to be part of your main village. And then once you've done that, you can also get the villager that has been up here in this place, and you can get him down into this area. Anyway, once you have removed this villager from up here, go ahead and remove that bed, remove all those leaves, and now we can start stacking your villages. So once you have your 2 main villagers in place, just go ahead and surround these guys with some leaves. That way they don't push each other off this platform and, kind of fall to their death. That would not be a good or productive thing to have happen. And once you have that done, we want to go ahead and place in a bell. This bell should link to these 2 guys right here. As you can see, when we break that, one of these guys gets storm cloud particles, and that is perfect. You also want to make sure that there are no other beds, bells, or workstations within the entire area around this farm. That'll totally mess with your villager linking and cause you a massive headache. So now we need to try and expand this village. So the first thing that we need to do is get ourselves some solid blocks and place 3 6-block long bars, and these bars need to be spaced out by a single block, just like so. We need to place beds underneath these bars so that the pillow of the bed is covered by a solid block. That's just kind of how these mechanics work. Anyway, go ahead and place in your 18 temporary kind of just like placeholder beds. This is going to act as kind of like an extension to the village, but kind of like be broken. Now what we need to do is we need to place in a bunch of beds over here in front of our nether portal. So now that we have two giant platforms of beds on either side, we need to get ourselves a villager from the nether. So just send it from the nether over here to the overworld, and it should just appear. A spawn egg is basically the exact same way of doing it. Now if your villagers link over to these beds with the blocks above them, you need to kill that villager, and you also need to tear out all your beds and then place them all back down again. Place these beds underneath the blocks first, and then place in these ones. So getting this to work first try might be a little bit tedious, but I do have a couple of tips for you. So make sure to remove all of your beds, and then go ahead and break these guys' bell, place it back down, make sure they are linked to it, and then log out and log back in. Once you are back into the game, then place down the beds underneath these blocks, log out, log back in, and then you can place down these blocks over here, or these beds. Next time you send through a villager, that should link to these beds. As you can see, send through another villager. I'm going to send through a third one because I don't like baby villagers. Anyway, we now have a successful second village over here. How do we tell that it's a second village and not just one big village? Well, we can place down a new bell, and that'll link exclusively to these guys over here. So we have that one linked to those guys. We can break this one. Only these guys will get the linking particles, the green ones and the storm clouds. And then we can also break this bell. Only these guys will get the linking and the storm cloud particles. This is how we know we have two separate villages, and that is why the bells are so useful on the Bedrock edition. So once you have placed down the two different bells and you know for a fact that you have two separate villages, what you can do is you can remove all of these beds on these sides, and you can also remove all of the extra beds that you have over here. Make sure to not remove the beds that these guys are sleeping in, as that is the actual village. If you break both of these beds, you're going to ruin your village and you're going to have to start over. But what we need to do now is we need to kind of migrate this village slowly but surely over to one of these four spots. Of course, you want to start in the back and then work yourself to the front. To migrate your village is actually pretty straightforward. What you want to do is you want to place down a new bed closer to your other two beds, and then break one of those beds. That guy should break from that bed and then instantly link to that one. As long as it's nighttime, he's going to go ahead and sleep in there, and now you've successfully moved your village a couple of blocks. So let's reproduce that again. Place down a new bed, break that one. We're gonna have to nudge this guy to the side so he doesn't try and jump on his face. He did it anyway. What an idiot. Anyway, we basically just need to keep on moving this village all the way to that back platform. So I've moved them about halfway there, and what I'd recommend doing every couple times that you move them is place down a new bell, or well, break their current one, then place it back down, and make sure that it only links to these guys. That way you know that you're still migrating one village and it didn't combine with any other ones in the area. So now that we know that this is still its own unique village, we can go ahead and just keep on moving these guys. Alright, so I have successfully moved our first village from that platform over there onto their back proper platform. Now, one thing that you do need to keep in mind for these little platforms for your beds is that bed orientation does actually matter. So for these two platforms in the back over here, you want to make sure that the pillows are kind of facing the front of the farm. As you can see, this right here is the front of the farm. And then for these kind of front platforms, you want to make sure that the pillows are facing towards the back. That is because the pillow half of the bed is the only part that's actually important, and that determines the village city. So we have to make sure that the orientation of the beds is exact. So keep that in mind as you are moving your villagers into place. Okay, so now that these guys are properly in place, what we need to do is remove the blocks underneath them and replace those with leaves. Of course, make sure to not click on the beds. That'll kick the villager out of the bed, make them angry, and make them disconnect. We also need to surround these guys in a layer of leaves that is 3 layers tall, of course, and then of course just fill in all of these blocks right above them. This is going to protect your villagers and keep them safe from all kinds of harm. That way they never die and you never have to go through this process ever again. Now is also a good time to go ahead and remove some of these temporary blocks right here, and you should be able to place in a bell right here and have that link to these guys. You can kind of see the particles in there. That means that they have successfully linked to it. So from here on out, the stacking of villages is the exact same process. So we need to get 3 more villages in here. It's the exact same process. I broke these guys' bell, place it back down, made sure it's only linked to them, logged out, and then put down these beds, logged out again, and now I put down these beds. The next villager that we send through should link to this bed over here. The next villager that we should, send through should also link to this bed. As you can see, that has worked just fine. We can go ahead and remove some of these kind of like extra beds in the way and place down a new bell. That should link exclusively to these guys, and now we have ourselves the 3rd village. Of course, go ahead and remove all extra beds in the area to avoid linking and combining of villages, and now you just kind of need to walk this village into that back area. Alright, so the 2nd village is now in place. The bell for these guys is going to go right on top of that observer, and that will link up to them. And now what we need to do is remove the blocks underneath their beds, of course replace those with leaves, and of course surround them in a 3 tall, box of leaves as well. Again, this is to protect them from pillagers and other bad things, and overall just make it smell nice in there. Leaves are great. Anyway, of course make sure to fill in the center as well. And now that we have both of our back villages in place, we can actually remove some of these identifier blocks and fill in the rest of this wall. And now what we need to do is get the 2 villages on the front in place, and you guys know the process for that. Get them in place and completely surround them with leaves. Alright, the 3rd village is now in place. The bell for this village is going to be going right above that observer right there. We should see those guys connect, and they are perfectly fine. Cool. Of course, make sure to replace all the blocks underneath the beds with leaves, and of course make sure to fully encase these guys in a box of 3 tall leaves too. Our 4th and final village is finally installed, and the bell for these guys is of course going to be going right above that observer. You should see the particles up here and the particles on the bell as well. So great, you are now pretty much completely done. One thing I do want to mention real quick before we move on is I actually installed these beds in the incorrect orientation. They need to be facing the other direction. For that, I'm just going to break one at a time, place that in, wait for him to link to it and sleep, and then we can switch around the other one. Not a big deal, just going to switch those around. He should sleep in there. There we go, put the leaves back, replace those blocks with some leaves, and now we're good to go. So it's not really a big deal if you install it incorrectly, just make sure it's all good before you actually start using the farm. So now that we have all 4 villages installed, what we can do is we can actually go ahead and remove these little identifier blocks that we've had here for ages and ages, and try not to break all of your scaffolding. But go ahead and place in these leaves again. Make sure that you have in your 3 boats to capture any stray vexes that might shoot out. Place a boat there, and of course right there too. That'll catch all of the guys. And now you're actually completely done with your advanced raid farm. And GG, I know that might have been slightly infuriating with the village stacking, but hopefully it wasn't too painful for you. The final thing to do is to decide if you want to either remove this little 5th village and this platform. If not, you can actually completely keep it there. I would keep this here. It might be useful for you to, fix this farm if it ever does break. And also, if you do want to keep this platform, make sure to cover it with leaves. Also, make sure to remove your nether portal, as raids will spawn in nether portals. Final notes, make sure that you have a leaf above each and every single one of your bells. That way, no raids spawn on your bells. And you also need to make sure to throw a bunch of tridents into your trident killer. So you want to throw a couple against that block right there, a couple against the front of that piston, and a couple against the front of that piston and that piston as well. That is way more tridents than is necessary, but you know what? These things literally drop like they're going out of style. Every other round you get one. If you have looting, not a big deal. Anyway, as soon as you turn on the trident killer, all of those will go to the center and you'll be good to go. Put back your glass, put in your slab, and now your raid farm is completely done. You can turn on your lower trident killer to get yourself some bad omen, stand in any of these 4 spots, and enjoy the insane rates of a quad stacked raid farm. And as you can see, we have ourselves a nice quad stacked raid farm. This thing is working insanely well, and hopefully you guys do enjoy building this thing in your worlds. Of course, I will keep you guys updated if anything changes with the village stacking, and if they break village stacking, coming in a future update. I guess I will have to make another raid farm tutorial. Jeez. Anyway, thank you all ever so much for watching. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please do let me know in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this tutorial and made it to this point in the video, maybe consider sharing this around with others so they can enjoy it too and witness the insane rates in their worlds. And also, if you're new here and you want to see more tutorials like this in the future, be sure to subscribe. But I will see you all down in the comment section and in the next one. Thank you again so much for watching. And then there was silence.